I don't know about trusted timekeeper. I'm the timekeeper. It's about 15 minutes of talking, and then 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A, depending upon how long you need to talk. So if you talk for longer, you have less Q&A time. Put it pretty much that way. So when you get within 2 to 3 minutes of the time, I'll send you like a chat, that it's nearing the time. You could ignore me, which is fine. I'm used to that, but just be aware that we might have to cut you off a little bit because we just in the interest of time and respect for everyone else who's going to speak. And if you'd like to stay on, of course, you're more than welcome to. At the end, we generally open it up the floor to everyone to ask questions. People can always ask questions at the end, but if they have other questions, but then they can ask questions. They can ask questions to all of you guys, and feel free to shout it out.
Awesome. Well said.
Oh. I don't know. Sorry, Andy. I didn't meet Bill. I didn't know we had another guest.
Bill's with Thomas, and he's going to help him with the video. Well,
oh, cool. Well, welcome. Great.
Yeah. Good to have you, Bill.
Thanks for having me.
Reality for.
With like elevator music we got going here.
Yep. Okay, 6:30.
Sounds like Monk.
It is.
It's okay. Dinah, one of my favorites.
Okay. 10 in the waiting room. Starting to boil up. And Chuck is here from Kura. Always fun. He's been joining for a while. All right, let's admit them. Okay. Welcome. Welcome to New York Augmented Reality. Thank you all for joining. Turn your cameras on and say hello. We have a wonderful event tonight. And we're super excited that you joined. Barry and I worked extremely hard to put it together, so we are happy you're here. Let's see who joined. Some familiar faces. Grammy, good to see you, Grammy. Hopefully you understand it a bit more. Chuck, good to see you. Glad you're here. Eric, good to see you again. Thanks for joining. We'll get started in just a minute now as people are rolling in. Hey, Terrace, how are you? Welcome. All right. Ezzy, welcome. Okay, we're short on time, so we'll just go right into it as folks roll in, but welcome back to New York Augmented Reality. We're happy to have you all here. Thank you all for joining. Really good to see familiar faces and new faces. And this is New York Augmented Reality. We have a great event for you tonight. Yeah, this is our cover image for this month from Acute Art that we chose. I thought it was a good example of art and augmented reality and location-based positioning of different various 3D models. So I chose that one. And I chose it as a way to frame this event because today's our 15th consecutive event, which is really exciting. We've been going for about a year now, and things have been growing nicely. We've had over 50 speakers from across the industry, which has been great. And tonight we have even more speakers to bring to you so you can learn more about augmented reality. And we almost crossed the 900 member mark. We're at 899 members before the event. So hopefully by the end of this event, we'll hit 900 members. And without further ado, I want to introduce Barry Seff, the co-organizer of the Meetup, who always has a few words to share. Barry, please.
Oh, I do. Yeah, my prepared remarks are here. Thank you on my visor. Just like to thank everyone again for coming. Hope everyone is having a nice fall, and we've got definitely fall weather over here on the East Coast, wherever you are. Thanks so much for joining. And Andy, thank you for putting me on a nice body. Appreciate that. Have a great day.
Thank you, Barry. Follow Barry on LinkedIn, add him, connect with him, anything you could do virtually. Barry, post your contact info in the chat so people have a way to stay connected with you and the NYAR community at large. Hello, Richard. Thanks for joining. Gab, good to see you. Okay, upcoming events this next month. We have the AR and VR Policy Conference on Thursday. And that's to explore the role of policy, which is probably going to be needed soon in the augmented and virtual reality industries. It was created by the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, so the ITIF. It's going to be a half-day event with talks and panels, so that's this Thursday. Niantic Lightship Global Launch, November 8th. Stay tuned for that, and we'll probably learn more during Luke's talk about it. Really exciting SDK that will enable a lot of exciting development for software-based augmented reality solutions. AWE in person, November 9th through 11th. I'm hoping to go, so if you plan on being there as well, reach out to me and hopefully we can meet. And then the next NYAR meetup is on November 22nd. So RSVP for that on Meetup, and we'll have some great speakers then as well. Apple had an event today, and they released a new MacBook Pro. This is not AR related, but still exciting for me nevertheless. I'm still using a 2015 MacBook Pro because I was waiting for a MagSafe, which they now have. And they have an HDMI port, and they got rid of the touch bar. Finally. Waste of time, and I'm happy they finally got rid of it, and that was very satisfying to do. On the hardware end, Magic Leap 2 was released, and another round of funding for the company, for the infamous Magic Leap. So we'll see where that goes. A company called Lynx had a Kickstarter campaign, and they raised almost $600,000, and they sold out of their. The Kickstarter campaign was funded in less than a day. And here's the founder, Stan LaRoque, who's going to be joining us for a future event showcasing some of the hand tracking functionality with their mixed reality headset. And then Microsoft and the US Army had to pause their initiative because although there's a lot of exciting developments, we all know the state of AR and all the hardware. So the deal is on hold. The $22 billion deal is on hold now due to concerns with a limited field of view and moisture conditions in the headset and remote coordination. So a bunch of issues within the hardware that we're all familiar with. So those are some things that happen. And then some tools that I don't really know how to use a wrench so well. So that's the animation I got. Play it again. I don't think it works like that. But Blipper released an SDK for WebAR. So if you don't like Eighth Wall and you want something for free, you could try it out. Blipper WebAR. Space 10 released a UX design kit for creating augmented reality mobile experiences. Something like this hasn't been launched yet, so it could be cool if you're a designer to check out. Niantic's releasing their Lightship tools to help you create AR experiences, so look out for the event in November. This company, Fire, released a software solution for cars. It's like a artificial intelligence AR software. Gives cars like AR software capabilities to better understand your environment. But it doesn't necessarily need to be a smart car off the bat. It seems like this software is able to add the tracking functionality to any standard vehicle. Maybe
What is the name of this, Andy?
This is Fire.
Fire.
Yeah. And they raised a Series A of about $12 million. So really exciting. Echo 3D, they're joining the next meetup as well. They raised 4 million, I think, from Facebook, and they do a cloud-based solution for like 3D content that could be really heavy, and they also compress it so it can come to your devices quickly and efficiently. And then lastly, in the news, Blender and Apple. So Apple joins the Blender Development Fund.
Whoa.
As a Patreon member. And they're pledging over 120,000 a year to support it. And now, without further ado, we have a great lineup tonight, and I'm excited to introduce you to those who are pioneering the next shift in the augmented reality industry. Paul Gallagher, Head of Technical Marketing, CTO of the EO Group at Applied Materials. Luke Ritchie, leading mixed reality innovator and the creator of the Hotstepper app. Thomas Panek, the CEO of Guiding Eyes for the Blind. And David Levitt, the CEO of Pantomime Corporation. Whoops. And without further ado, I'm excited to have Paul Gallagher here with us. He's the head of technical marketing for engineered optics in the office of the CTO at Applied Materials. He focuses on transitioning meta-optic solutions from the lab to commonly used products. Paul has more than 30 years of technical and business experience in image sensors, optics, camera systems, and image processing. And he has been at the start of many now well-established image-based products and markets. He has an MBA from Pepperdine University and a BE in engineering physics from Stevens Institute of Technology. Paul holds 13 patents and has written over 25 papers for journals and magazines. Thanks for joining, Paul. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, Eddie. Let me share my screen.
Sure.
Sure. Okay, I'm assuming everyone can see that.
Looks great.
Yep. Okay. So Applied Materials, some may be familiar if you're in the semiconductor industry. Applied Materials historically makes the equipment that you make semiconductors from, and has a significant focus on AR. And as we look at all of the things that need to happen to make AR ubiquitous, as experienced from the Microsoft Army announcement, it's not quite there yet. One of them, a non-trivial one, is the optics. And so that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about. And if we look at materials engineering to make new optical devices, if you think about it, most of the innovation in optics happened 300 years ago, 400 years ago. And we've just been using those same functionalities and those same basic capabilities in engineering and just improving on the manufacturing process and the design process, and not necessarily changing the way we consider optics. And this is what Applied is looking at. And so there are a whole bunch of different papers that have been demonstrated by academia, and Applied is focused on scaling that and enabling that into high volume opportunities. And so if we look at, three of the primary challenges to traditional optics, it's precise wavefront engineering, thinner optical systems, and novel devices. These are all very challenging. And if you look at what we can do in engineered optics, we can leverage the capabilities from semiconductor manufacturing to enable previously impossible optical systems, small, lightweight wearables with thin, flat substrates, and control the local nanostructure placement. And all of these things will move forward into changing optics and has the potential to completely change the fundamentals of optics. I mean, if you look at your iPhone, if you look at your Samsung phone, there's a wart on the back. There's a wart on the back because I can't fit the optics that I need to fit in the footprint that the industrial designer wants. And, Steve Jobs would be rolling in his grave if he saw that, oh my goodness, what's going on here? And it's just the physics of conventional optics. What we're doing with the engineered optics is we're enabling novel structures, novel capabilities, and the ability to combine multiple surfaces of a conventional optic. And to think about how we do this, if you look at a refractive optics, light travels slower in glass than air. And so at that surface interface of the lens, and by changing the interface shape of the lens, that delays light less at the edges and more towards the center. So you got a typical, you threw the rock in the pond and you've got this wave, this circular wave going forward. And, you know, if it was an optical wave, it would hit the lens and you could make the wavefront planar. If we look at a metasurface lens, an interference pattern can also cause delays. And what we're doing is at the nano level, we're varying the delay by changing the width of the patterned elements. And the lens would then have the equivalent of having a higher density in the center and lower density at the edge, thus giving you the same fundamental impact from a conventional lens. If we look at this relative to structure, if you take a look at a conventional lens shape, and I wanted to get rid of all of the extra weight and make it thinner, I can make it into a Fresnel lens based on that surface shape of a simplistic lens. And so you'd see a Fresnel shape that looks like this. Well, by changing the shape of the pillars in a periodicity way, you can actually see that we're creating the fundamental shape of the phase front of that Fresnel lens, right? So you just take a look here and you take a look here, and we're getting similar performance. And it's by manipulation of the pillar placement and the pillar size that we can do this. And, you know, what we're talking about here is, you know, this is, as we zoom in, you know, we're zooming into a fundamental shape that's on the order of tens of nanometers to hundreds of nanometers, depending upon the positioning and the thickness and what you're trying to achieve. And these are all things that are now able to be done. If we look at this from an AR perspective, what we're looking at is instead of making focusing lenses, we're looking at gratings. And so by putting a surface relief grating through as the input coupler for the image that's projected onto the glass, I'm then allowing this light wave to traverse through the front and back surfaces of the glass. And then another surface relief grating translates that back out to the eye. So it's bouncing and it's going to keep bouncing forever until it hits this second surface relief grating, which then redirects the energy to the eye. And the benefit of this approach is we can make these gratings in very, very accurate positioning and location and modify them relative to the target wavelengths. So what do we need to do to make a highly efficient surface relief grating for waveguide? We need high MTF and resolution, and that means you need good pitch uniformity and repeatability across devices and wafers, which is something which is very straightforward, achievable with semiconductors. And you need a wide field of view for the person to feel like they're immersed in the system, in the scene. And you do that with high index materials and substrates. Well, this is Applied Materials, right? You're one of the largest materials companies in the world relative to focused on these types of materials. Being able to do double-sided processing and these kinds of things. You need a large and uniform eye box. All right, so that the pupil replication is uniform across the device. And this has to be achieved with very accurate and very uniform nanostructures. You need high contrast. I can't have haze. I have to have excellent quality substrates. And using the amorphous films and wide selection of high refractive index films, low surface roughness of the substrate films, all of these things come into play. Color uniformity, critical parameter. All right, and so these are the critical dimensions to meet that target design. Lower power consumption means you have to have very high efficiency in terms of redirection of the light coming in through the input coupler and of the light being then projected through the output coupler. Reliability, comfort, low cost, all of these things fall into play very well when you're looking at surface relief gratings. And if we look at comparisons of different approaches, right, if we look at the LCOS and Prism, it's cost effective, it's compact, it's a very small field of view though, it blocks your vision, and it's difficult to put into the eyewear. It's difficult to have an eyewear appearance. If you look at the micro OLED plus freeform or bird bath, you get good contrast, high resolution color. Size is a bit big, and you have a limited amount of brightness with the micro OLEDs. If you look at holographic film, it's a small size, small power consumption. There's big color dispersion and low contrast though. If you look at LCOS or DLP or even laser with a waveguide, you get a bright, big field of view with high resolution, medium power consumption. It's thin, it's light. It can be designed into an eyewear appearance because you're essentially, you see here, that's the input coupler, and here's the output coupler. We don't need framing. We don't need something to sit in the backside or above to cover this. And so we believe that this, over time, will become the dominant approach. So some of the advantages of surface relief versus combiner technologies. It's thinner, it's lighter weight and form factor. It's a friendly and flexible for industrial designs. We can, there's a massive eye box expansion. So if you've got a 1 millimeter square input coupler, you can translate that to a 3 centimeter square output coupler. A large field of view, especially for the vertical field of view. It works with miniaturized light engines, and there's high see-through transmission. If we look at reflective waveguides, it's a top-down single optic manufacturing. It's got a higher MTF, the 2D eye box expansion, smaller form factor, and larger field of view. But why Applied? I mean, Applied makes, you know, multi-tens of million-dollar pieces of equipment. Well, Applied has been focused on the last 50 years for creating nanostructures to manipulate electrons. And it's gotten to the point now we've created these in control of these nanostructures to the point where we can manipulate photons. And so Applied has a completely different business model here where we will be providing components, not 10 or $100 million pieces of equipment, but single element components and some components that would go into waveguides or would go into lenses. And so that we can leverage our optical device performance. We have a strong background in exotic transparent substrates and can drive the yield and cost. And the benefit is we have direct link to the equipment manufacturer because we are the equipment manufacturer. So being able to get the equipment made and be able to process and develop the processes we need, that's our core expertise. So if we look at the EO technology leadership, we have over 100-person team, the broadest glass processing equipment in the world, very high performance photonic materials, very precise nanostructures. We're customizing the mature 300 millimeter equipment platforms to suit the needs for surface waveguides. And we're doing everything in-house, wafer processing, singulation, finishing, the whole capability. Our focus, as probably you can infer, has been on surface relief waveguides and flat lenses. And here you can see a whole wafer, a 300 millimeter wafer of surface relief waveguides. This bright point is the input coupler, and then this is the output coupler, and we're purposely shining this in a manner so you can see it all. Normally, this is all transparent, but you can see the size of the input coupler relative to the size of the output coupler. If we look at why, we look at the AR/MR headset waveguides, we see these are very big potential markets as we approach the end of the decade. Based on the data from Yole, this is projected to be a $13 billion market by the end of the decade. That's just for the waveguides. That's not the full headset. And billions have already spent in the race to win on the next personal compute platform. On top of the technical challenges is projecting this display to the eye. It's one of the key issues. And we believe we can solve the weight, the field of view, the brightness, and the image quality issues with our approach. What we bring is the productivity capability, very high efficiency, multifunction design, very high uniformity. We can process both sides of the wafer and the full singulation. And how would this work? We start with the purple is our partner. And we start with a partner. We develop the design review and the development agreement. We go through a rigorous design approval process, decide whether we're going to use nil or etch or a combination of the two. We go through encapsulation and AR coding, dicing, testing to give you the wave. On the front end here, for the design, we can work with a partner's design. We have several design houses we can bring to the table. And so there's a variety of ways we can work on achieving your target end performance. We have the nil and etch flows, both for binary, which was the straight up structures you saw, or for slanted. We can do single, double, or triple sheet. What we're talking about there is across the color spectra. Light bends, you've seen what happens with a prism, light bends differently. So that in certain situations and certain quality metrics and certain target performance, you may need 3 sheets. You may need a red, a green, and a blue sheet of different slanted waveguides to develop this. And a variety of indexed inorganic materials with low loss and low scatter, all on our 300 millimeter platform. So that's a high level overview of what we're doing here at Applied. We see this as a very promising, very interesting market. We think that there's a lot of opportunity to be had. And we think we bring something very unique to the table in terms of enabling a critical component for the adoption of the technology.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate that, and really informative. We have a question from the audience about your competitors. Right to the juggler, I guess. Who are some of AMAT's biggest competitors, and what is their competitive advantage in the industry over others doing the same thing? We had, for example, Imagine Optics. Maybe they're still really a startup, but I guess they'd be considered a startup as they have waveguide type of materials. But yeah, so what do you think about that?
Well, I personally think competition is good for a couple different reasons. One is, if you look at the major companies investing in this, they're going to be very concerned about a single source for such a critical component. Having said that, this is, we're working under Applied's umbrella. And so the funding that we're being provided is having been at many startups, having just come from a startup, I can tell you management spends a good 30% of their time worried about the next round. And that's a huge distraction to getting the job done. This is something we don't really have to deal with within the CTO group. And it's a committed strategic initiative. I think the proof is going to be in the pudding in terms of delivering product that works and works well. And I think that's where we hold a very, very distinct advantage if you're looking at any kind of approaches that involve semiconductor processing equipment. I mean, we are a gorilla in semiconductor processing equipment.
That leads me to, yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was wondering, so you're obviously well funded, but so does that mean you only work with large companies, or would you work with startups? I mean, like Andy spotlighted, like Lynx, like they're pretty small funded. Are you open to all different sizes of companies?
Yeah. Yes, we've got it. There's an announcement out that we work with MetaLens, which is a flat optics startup out of the Boston area. We've worked with several other startups. So it's a matter of how can we move the technology forward. Dispelix is a design house for waveguides, and we've got a publicly announced relationship with them.
Right. Yeah. I think they're part of the LASAR group as well. Like
right.
LASAR. We had previously someone else in the last talk. Awesome.
Right. Yeah.
So in terms of substrates, you were referring to transparent substrates and polymers. What's your preferred substrate, at least in terms of your production? Currently, is it polymer, is glass, ITO coated glass? What is the standard substrate, and where do you think
Um,
the industry is going with it?
Right now, it's coated silica. That may change depending upon the refractive index you're trying to target. But right now, most of it is silica. The benefit of the silica is also it's not difficult to get 300 millimeter. We have 200, we have 100, but obviously, it's really you're hard pressed to do that in volume at an acceptable price point. If you're talking about
Right. So do you think it's cheap? It would be cheaper than glass. I mean, I was showing Andy the Day of Glass. If you remember those videos from at this point, it's 10 years old. At least when they first started. So there's obviously they have vested interest in glass. Do you think that the price point of glass or the silica, the coated silica you have, is similar to the price point of glass? Or I mean, they have really highly engineered glass, but then you have different durability, different off angle and transparency
and that's where I think
concerns.
The biggest concern is the transparency.
Awesome. Let's call it there, Paul. I know you have to go for another
Okay.
meeting. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Sorry, I can't stick around. I've got another commitment at 4, so thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
Back
Thank you for coming.
Recorded.
Great having you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's get this thing going. Next up, I'm honored to have with us Luke Ritchie. He designs and develops XR products. And previously, Luke founded and led the XR team at Nexus Studios in London and Los Angeles. He's designed AR for Google, Facebook, Niantic, Samsung, Disney, Marvel, President Obama, and more.
Yeah.
Yep. Luke has focused his interests on location-based AR using visual positioning and the emergence of AR wearables. Currently, Luke is working on a new AR product. Thanks for joining, Luke.
Thanks, Andy and Barry for having me. I think you said everything. Hopefully, hopefully I've got something else.
Sorry.
Let me screen share. See if I can make this big. Oh God, I always forget what the button is. There we go. Yeah, so thanks for having me. It's exciting to be back and talking with people. As Andy said, I've been making digital work for about 15 years or so, and about 9 years or so, I got really into open frameworks and building. I was kind of in a web background, and then I discovered that you could build stuff on boxes and have no social media APIs to worry about, and you could just plug in connects and sensors, and I was kind of all crazy about that. So I was looking for an opportunity, and Nexus Studios is an animation company in London. I'd just been running another startup in Brazil, so I came back and I wanted to go there and see if I could continue kind of my interest in that space. And yeah, for many years we built some really cool products and projects for clients, and then I guess in about 2015, we started getting to AR and VR actually, and yeah, I really kind of began to double down on that and became kind of fascinated in the medium, and still working on it now. And I thought today it's a bit too soon to sort of mention what I'm working on at the moment. I'm starting a new company, and yeah, it's still early, but it's location-based AR, which is just continuing a theme of all the work that I've been doing for the last few years. And I thought what would be really cool was to just sort of spend 10 minutes telling you that story of how I ended up working in this space. So I was going to start with like just 2 projects that really kicked it off. I remember, I think the first time I was working with Qualcomm, and we were looking at Vuforia, which they owned at the time, and we were doing some image tracking work with them. And then I can't exactly remember the beginnings of the New Yorker magazine, but we started talking to them about an opportunity to do an AR cover for them very early on with Christoph Neumann. This ended up in a Netflix documentary, bizarrely enough, so you might recognize it. yeah, it was one of the first ones that, you know, I kind of love the fact that it begins in 2D and then transitions into 3D. It was all quite, you know, it was early days of this stuff, but it was really exciting. And then yeah, the Obama White House read the New Yorker. They saw this, and we started working with their digital team around this was just before ARKit was coming out. But I think it came out just after ARKit, and yeah, this was to tell a story on the $1 bill, the role of the White House in democracy, and it featured the family as little people, and you could zoom in and out, and had lots of fun little kind of spatial tricks where if you went too close to the roof of the White House, the Secret Service would appear to scare you off. And yeah, this was a big one too. I mean, it became #1 in education on the App Store for a long time, and you know, and really actually, you know, because of who it was for, you ended up seeing on TV, and lots of news anchors talked about it. So it was a really big project for us. And then to dovetail into this one. ARKit had come out, and people were still kind of putting 3D objects on a table. And the thing about markerless AR at the time was it was like it could be more than that. So I think my team and I were all a little bit frustrated that we wanted to sort of design an experience which was more than an object on a table, and especially an object that didn't know it was on a table. You know, like it was kind of, we'd been working with that illusion for a while, and we wanted some more intelligence to the work. So developed this idea called Hotstepper, which I'll just run this video. This came, yeah, music's down. It's got some pretty hardcore music that we attached to it without a mute button, just to annoy people. This was a seven-week kind of really proof of concept R&D project to see if you could have a character walk you anywhere in the world. It was based on some learned behavior, that the easiest way to get somewhere is to follow someone who knows the way. And we thought it would be pretty cool if, like, we could figure out how this guy could come with you and really show the opportunities for markerless AR. I have to say, I think, like, I remember sitting around a table and we were all thinking about technically how we might do this, and we never actually thought it was going to be as complicated and as much of a nightmare as it turned out to be. But we released it. Yeah, we released it. It traveled quite far in the industry. He's obviously semi-naked and pretty silly looking, so that helps. But you know, for the most part, it worked. And yeah, I've spoken about him for many years. I still have people come up to me and remember the Hotstepper. So he's a great project, and a really yeah, a really kind of exciting one to have done. I guess really though, this is where the story begins, because there was something about him that just frustrated me to the end, and we ended up with some solutions, but they weren't great. So let's just talk technically how Hotstepper works for a second. So he's powered by GPS. GPS, as we all know, is sort of 10 to 12 foot accuracy. This presented some pretty early problems. You could kind of have him walking down a street, and that was kind of okay. But when you get to a junction where he needs to turn right, he doesn't know when to turn right. Because obviously GPS kind of only begins to sort of like kick in at some point. So often he'd sort of walk into the middle of the road and turn right. There's a funny disclaimer. The app still actually is quite used by people, especially in Asia. There's a disclaimer, I think, on the front page which says, "Don't follow this guy," which our legal department forced us to put in, primarily because sometimes he'll walk into the road. So this presented a real issue. The second issue was triggering out true north. So when you start the app, you want to know, obviously, do you need to turn left or turn right from your sort of initial pose? And GPS can't give you that data. You actually need to walk a certain amount before you can kind of really triangulate where true north might be based on GPS data. So that was another problem we had with him. We ended up with a little bit of a sort of hack, which kind of saved us in the last sort of few days, which was really, he's kind of got like an invisible toddler leash around his neck, or kind of dog leash around his neck. If we think the data is good, and actually this might be correct, then we let him walk out in front of you with some confidence. When we think that the data might be wrong, we tether him a bit closer to the phone. And this helped us really walk around corners, essentially. So he began to turn sooner than in the middle of the road eventually. But as I said, this was kind of, this began this journey where I was like, there must be another solution to be able to do AR, positional AR with something more than GPS. Around this time, so this is like getting towards the end of 2017, autonomous cars obviously were around, and there was the beginnings of startups that were looking at what's called visual positioning, so using computer vision to give you your position. So I've been working with a lot of the main tech companies for a long time, so I did ask some friends if they were working on theirs, and if there was some access we might be able to get granted, because we wanted to give Hotstepper some new abilities. Most of them, unfortunately, or all of them, turned me down, but the startups were more than happy to collaborate. We decided to go with a company called Scape Technologies, which was just around the office, around the corner from our office. I really liked Ed Miller, who's the CEO. He was a bit of a realist about where this tech was at the time, and he was up for collaborating. Again, like, it seems obvious now, but a lot of people weren't looking at visual positioning for AR at the time. So there wasn't a sort of obvious people to go to for this. So I found these videos. I don't think anyone's seen these videos, which is fascinating for me. So this is really exciting to be able to show you this. Hopefully they're interesting. They don't look very interesting on paper, but technically they're quite fun. So how do you begin to do this? Obviously, you need a visual positioning engine, and the second thing is you actually need a map of the location to be able to bring in to have things like occlusion, which we were desperate to have. So if I just play this video on the left, this is trying to triangulate position. It gets its first position. If you can see, we're just overlaying the texture and the mesh on it, and it's pretty off at the moment, but it updates its position. And then I don't know how this colors off in the stream, but as you can see, there's the real building and then there's the mesh, and they seem to be off in this video by, I don't know, 15 centimeters or something like that. So that was the very first sort of demonstration of this, and we flew a drone around our building and captured it for that scan. And then here, I think this is actually at Scape's offices. So you can see it's relocalized. It's load the, just kind of rectangular primitive for the occlusion. And then Hotstepper walks around the corner. So I might just play that again because it goes pretty fast, but it's pretty cool. This was us, first time ever us seeing occlusion and working pretty well in that test environment. And then on the right, you can just see these are inside Unity. These are the scans that we use for placement and location. This has been going on, I guess, 3 or 4 months we've been doing this. And then I was talking to Samsung because they'd seen some work we did for the band U2 in stadiums, an AR experience. We started talking about their 5G strategy. And I wanted to collaborate with them, but I told them that really what we should be doing is looking at location-based AR, and we should be looking at visual positioning engines. And I showed them the work that I was doing in this space and asked if they wanted to collaborate. They took a couple of months and then came back and said yes. And then what ensued was a hell of a lot of prototypes that I can't show you. We made prototypes for about 1.5 years, all over the world, really, in the United States, in South Korea, in London. We built tools to help us with location-based services. We rewatched all our favorite sci-fi movies and made 80-foot volumetric women dancers. We did it all. Everything that we could think of, we tried and tested. We got really good at scanning and photogrammetry. Scape's technology got better during that process, and our tech got better during that process too. And then I started to beg and plead, and we managed to get one proof of concept that became public. I wrote a whole Medium article about this journey that you can find. This is what we did for the Dallas Cowboys, AT&T, Samsung. We built a digital twin of the stadium inside and out, and we streamed giant volumetric videos of the stars. I'm English, so I'm pretty poor at my American football, but you might recognize some of them. Yeah, it was the one time we got to basically showcase all the work. To be honest with you, we were as blown away seeing these images for the first time as people were for seeing them, because we weren't quite sure it was going to work this well. These guys are 80 foot tall. You could play. This is a game we built called Time Attack. You could play the game on the field. You could play the game in the nosebleeds. Wherever you wanted, every seat, it was able to relocalize and play the game. And these things were just phenomenal for us to watch. And we have, because we have this mesh, we have like these some videos where the characters like are high-fiving the Jumbotron, like they're really connecting with the architecture of the stadium, because the tech had got really good by that point. And then I never get to show this video, so I've just chucked this in. It's not quite relevant, but it's relevant to visual positioning. It was so good and I was so excited. I wanted to see if we could relocalize in the air. So this didn't exist. I don't know if it exists now. I couldn't find a drone which had a camera rig, unfortunately, for a mobile phone. So we had to kind of build a makeshift one. So it's a bit dodge. But this is AR being relocalized on a drone from a mobile phone in the air. And bar a little bit of drift, it works pretty well. So you can see his hands are slightly out. They should be a little bit above, and there's a bit of drift there, but it relocalized. So when we talk about these metaverses and stuff now, I mean, this is the future that we're building. And anyway, as you can see, I don't think anyone's been stupid enough to try to put a phone on a drone again. But anyway, it worked. And then running out a bit of time. After that project came out, that one traveled very far and wide. Google started talking to us about an opportunity to do something similar, but do it in the arts world. So we collaborated with SK Telecom and Google at the Chandeok Palace in South Korea, where we sort of, this is using Google's technology now. Pretty soon after the last project came out, Skate Technologies was bought by Facebook, so that team's now at Facebook. We're now using Google's technology and then all the tools that we built on our side. And yeah, we built a similar palace-wide experience where you can travel around the palace. You'll be guided around the palace. I'll come to that in a second. And you can experience volumetric experiences throughout. It's a gigantic palace, so it must be one of the biggest areas that's been mapped for visual positioning. This is, I think, when did this come out? Sort of April 2020. This is Ritchie. I'm going to come back to Ritchie because really he's Hotstepper in disguise. Yeah, this was a beautiful project. We had to actually install a lot of this during COVID, which was really difficult, but it works really well. It's an enhanced tour experience. When you arrive at the palace, you can pick up a phone or an iPad, and you can do this experience. I'm going to skip on because I'll run out of time a bit. I just want to talk about Ritchie. This was a culmination, basically, of 3 years of work. So Ritchie is a mystical creature. He can navigate the palace with you. You just tap on the map where you want to go. He appears and he starts walking. He walks up and down these ramps through through narrow areas. He knows when he's at steps, and he'll jump above the steps. We couldn't get him walking up the steps quite yet, but he knows where they are and he avoids them. But he's a fully networking AR navigator. So yeah, it's super cool to finally get that, because it really was the culmination of Hotstepper and giving an AR character those sort of superpowers to know where they are. And yeah, 2022, I'm kind of excited because we all took a bit of a break during this COVID for kind of location-based experiences. But let's be honest, 5G got better during that time. AR got better during that time. Apple released its geo maps for, I don't know, 15 or so cities so far. And you mentioned Niantic. I've been working with Niantic for about a year or so now, and Lightship is being released, and you'll benefit from lots of the tools and tech that they had during Pokemon for free out of the box. I'll be at their launch just before AWE as well. And so, it's actually going to be a really exciting time. And then obviously, if you plug in what's been going on with eyewear at the moment, you can see that this future is going to be one where you turn up at a location that you've never been before, and there will be enhancements and experiences that you can find. And I'm really focused on trying to design for that at the moment, and make that a world that we do want to live in, and not a world that we don't want to live in. All right, that's it. I'm gonna wrap up. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any questions about the project. But thanks for having me. It was nice to be able to tell this story.
Thanks, Luke. That was awesome.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we love all of this great stuff. So people want to know if people will actually leave their house to get this location-based experiences if you have such awesome in-house AR. Do you think? I don't know. That's kind of a tongue-in-cheek question. Feel free not to answer that if you don't like.
No,
more conceptual. Okay.
No, I
Sure,
just think
it.
we've been stuck in this pandemic for a couple of years. So obviously everything's become focused on making everything accessible at home. I think the reality is we like seeing people in real life, and we like being outside. So I actually think that there'll be a turning point. I don't think everyone's going to be joining a virtual metaverse every minute and never leaving the house. Those things remain strong, I think. So no, I feel bullish on that. It's just been a dark few years.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, and here's a serious question. Did the American football Panthers steal your idea of the AR football?
That's a good. Yeah, that's a good one, because it actually brings up a continued frustration I have. But this is just, this is unfortunately, if you make things, this is a punishment. A lot of those experiences, that one included, are broadcast AR. They're not mobile-based AR, which is I'm not going to undermine the technology, but it doesn't come with the same barriers that you have if you have to make these things work on a mobile phone. So
Sure.
Those things go viral, and they're awesome to see. I love them as much as anyone. We were focused on basically making AR and visual positioning work on a mobile phone from any position. And all those experiences use just the broadcast AR. So they look really cool on social media, but it's not quite the same as being able to, imagine having the phone in your hand on location, or, the world we all hope exists a little bit is that we'll have eyewear to be able to see those things for real in situ.
Definitely cool. We have a question from Maggie. I think the last question we've got. What are some of the potential risks of the metaverse?
Oh no, don't. There's really bad risks. I guess that was my point a little bit about making sure that we design this correctly. Especially in eyewear. I've worked in eyewear for a couple of years. I've been helping companies design the input mechanisms and UX models for these things. And listen, it's important that we do it right. Otherwise you get to there's a world in which you basically get to design the reality you want to see. And unfortunately, we all have different likes and dislikes. And if you can plug those into some sort of reality filter, it's a little bit terrifying what people might do. So yeah, I think there are some amazing use cases that will create real societal change. And I'm excited by that, but it has to be carefully done, because yeah, it can definitely go, you know, should you want to, in a darker area. But yeah, that's all I'll say on that. It's a tough question, that one. We all have to be careful.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and from Thomas, can you do, I think this is a request, a special request for your next project. He's not asking for any payment. Can you do a location-based choose your own adventure?
Yeah, that would be cool. Actually, I think there are people building this, and I think Niantic is a pretty good platform for things like that. But yes, you know, if someone's not already building it, it's a good idea. I love those books as much as anyone else, and AR, the scavenger hunt nature of AR warrants those really nicely. People have talked a lot for many years really about sort of like what's the AR podcast? You know, can I go out onto the location and tell stories at locations and create that in a platform that I can share with people? So yeah, I'd love to make that too.
Yeah, it'd be sweet. Yeah, it makes me think like another interesting app. Just this is my own commentary, but geocaching. I have a little scout son, and you know, if anyone has done that with their children or themselves, how much of a pain in the ass it is. But if you actually had some kind of clues in real life, you would not really look so much as a failure as a father. But that's just me. Anyway, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And feel free to stay on.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Barry. Now,
Thank you.
Now I'm excited to introduce Panek. He's the president and CEO of Guiding Eyes, a New York-based not-for-profit whose mission is to provide service dogs to individuals with vision loss. Under his leadership since 2014, the organization has grown assets to over $100 million and annual revenue to $30 million, and has developed partnerships with MIT and Google to develop new technologies and bring innovation to the guide dog field. His running exploits and work with Guiding Eyes has been featured regularly in the New York Times, on the Today Show, highlighted by Time Magazine, Disney's It's a Dog Life, and by nearly every major media outlet, including ABC, CBS, NBC, NPR, and the BBC, to name a few. In addition, Panek was one of the top-ranked Google searches in 2019 and featured as a hero in Google's Year in Search. And really honored to have you here with us, Thomas. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. I don't know where you pulled that information from, but thank you so much. It could be the LinkedIn profile. I wanted to just say, really great to follow on two great speakers. You know, you see how we're dealing with both obviously optics and positioning. And my project has been a lifelong passion to be able to help people who are blind. I'm a person who's blind navigate. So augmented reality to me means non-visual input into being able to ultimately navigate an environment. And so a few years back, I started conceptually seeing if we could do an on-device screen where we could, on-device algorithm where we could use the camera-based technology in a regular smartphone to be able to take in, 20 or 30 frames per second, process that into some meaningful data for a person who can't see to be able to navigate using sound. So we had to divide the problem into really three fundamental challenges. One was, how do you communicate to a person who can't see so that they can actually orient themselves in an environment? A very complex problem. The second is, how do you take the environment and be able to do the on-device interpretation so that you can actually provide some non-visual cues to the person. And then third, of course, as we see with computer vision, all the challenges around there is, how do you interpret the environment to provide the person with a safe route to travel? And so We started with working with Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab at MIT to really try to get the one problem out of the way, which is guide dogs are great. I've got a great, those of you who have dogs, I got a great dog. He's a wonderful guide dog. Is not able or capable of seeing overhead obstacles. It's like if you were walking through New York City with an 18-foot pole. He's 2 feet high, I'm 6 foot tall. So, you know, me carrying an 18-foot pole sighted through the city, trying not to knock anything above, it's a really high task. So we started looking at some of those fundamentals, and what we came up with was a concept called Guideline. Or this was another COVID project, because during COVID, we're all sort of stuck at home. And we started to think about how do we actually allow a person to be able to be mobile in environment. So I was at a hackathon with Google when we started to really conceptualize how this would work. And by the time we left that day, we thought of a concept where we would actually follow a physical line. Seems pretty basic at first. Okay, you follow a basic line. You know, those of you who've played with Arduino can see that a basic line would enable you to get from place to place. And be able to track a line. But in an environment that's complicated, like Central Park or the city, it's not so easy. So when we were doing some of the modeling for that, looking at how do we distinguish, for example, the line being yellow. So we worked with the Department of Transportation to paint a yellow line through Central Park, and ultimately wanted to keep me on that line. I'm going to show a video in a second of how the project works, but leaves were falling. And what do you do with a falling leaf and interpreting yellows? All of a sudden, you see the line shooting off to the left or the right. So we had a large degree of challenges in trying to really use the algorithm. We had to hand code a lot of annotated data to be able to help the on-device learning mechanism to really understand what a leaf was versus the line, so that I don't run off course. So we started on a 200-meter track, which was obviously their lines painted on a track to do the proof of concept indoors. And we used some audio cues to kind of push me to the left and right. And we were able to accomplish a mile. And then we went into some very complicated problems, which was, what do you do with sunlight and a camera? And what happens with sunlight with the camera is you, in effect, are not able to successfully get some of the information that you need to be interpreted, even with 30 frames a second. So I'm going to play the video and then take some questions afterwards about the journey. Bill, if you wouldn't mind rolling it.
See you at the finish.
All right, Thomas.
Ben, thank you very much. Where are you, brother?
Right here, buddy.
All right. You want to show me the way? Straight to the right? Let's go.
My name is Thomas Panek, and I'm a blind man. I'm an athlete, I'm a runner, I'm a father, I'm a CEO. I have a genetic condition, it turns out, that would make me blind by the time I was a young adult. When you run, you like a kid, you feel free. You go as fast as you can, and eventually I couldn't do that anymore. I lost that part of me. I ended up getting some volunteer human guides to run with me, but I was always behind. Even though my legs and my lungs had the capacity to run faster, I had to follow the person in front of me. Having the ability to do it independently was really important to me.
Thomas came to Google during a one-day hackathon event, and during that event, he asked us,
Can we help a blind runner navigate? Can we make that happen? Can we make navigation for a blind runner possible?
it's not obvious to us how to do it, but we came up with this basic prototype.
So what we came up with was a system that just uses a regular Android phone. The machine learning algorithm that we have detects the line and can tell whether the line is to the runner's left, right, or center. We can then send signals to the runner that guides them left and right based on their positioning.
The first time we went out, we didn't even know if sound would be enough to guide me. So it's a sort of that beta testing process that you go through.
From human eyes, it's very obvious to recognize the line. Teaching a machine learning model to do that is not that easy.
You step left and right as you're running, so there's like a shake to the line, left and right. As soon as you start going outdoors, now the light is a lot more variable.
Tree shadows, falling leaves, And also the line on the ground can be very narrow and there may be only a few pixels for the computer vision model to recognize.
We didn't want to rely on any internet connection. We had to take our huge model and shrink them into something that we can run on device as fast as we need for someone to run at full speed with.
Well, we've been waiting for 25 years for this minute.
People with vision don't want blind people to take risks. That's what keeps people who are blind from participating in society fully. The safest thing for a blind person to do is to sit still. I ain't sitting still. There was no tether. There was no stick. There was no furry dog. It was just being with yourself.
Absolute freedom. Oh my goodness. That's the first time I've run alone in decades. Just through the woods, you know, by myself. I never thought we'd be here, you know. I didn't think we'd ever be here. It's independence, you know. I'm so dependent on people every day. You, the kids, Blaze. Just me and Elaine, huh?
I'm about to test a pretty neat sounding app by Google called Guideline.
I don't walk by myself outside of my home.
I'm feeling a little nervous. I never walked without a cane or my guide dog before.
It's kind of scary, but okay.
Interesting.
Wow.
You good? All right. Off we go.
Oh, because she wants to do that uphill, Mary Ann Stano.
I can describe it as like flying freely.
Freeing, I think, would be like the word that I describe it as.
I was able to walk down the street and I felt safe.
Not everybody has a chance to have a guide dog or a volunteer human guide. It's really an opportunity to provide an individual who's blind with freedom to be mobile and active and fit and exercise.
Project Guideline is an early-stage research project. As we continue our research, we hope to work with more organizations. To learn more, please visit goo.gle/Project Guideline. Thank you to Thomas and Guiding Eyes for the Blind for their collaboration and support.
So that you could take out the screen share that I saw. We had a question: is it possible to restore sight to the blind? It actually is for the first time in human history. We're seeing some real breakthroughs over the past 3 years in optogenetics. If anybody's familiar with that, it's combining the ability to send signals to ganglion cells. You have the photoreceptors in the center of the eye that primarily are derived by having healthy photoreceptors. We all have tens of millions of them in our eyes that allow us to see bright and vivid detail. In the past 2 years, two very, very promising sciences are taking place. One is obviously optogenetics and using Argus 3 retinal prosthesis, which is kind of using the best of camera technology and being able to get that information to the eye. The other is obviously gene therapy, and both have started to restore sight in some people that have particular single gene mutations, including, for example, Leber's congenital amaurosis, which causes blindness at a very young age. So there is definite progress going forward. I think one of the amazing things about augmented reality is that, as you can see from the women that were trying that technology out for the first time without holding on to something or a dog, it really is creating a meaningful way for people to be more mobile and active. So I'll stop there and ask if anybody has any other questions. Skiing, you have to definitely work on keeping paint on snow. That'll be interesting. If you can come up with that, we'll solve the skiing problem. I saw that question. Thank you for the mind-boggling comment. There was one other question I do not see because I listened to it, but could someone read me, Andy, that first question, or Barry, that came up? I missed one.
Definitely. So Gab at Tasami wants to know, in the future, could you use an augmented line on the ground as opposed to needing a physical marker?
Yes, and that's where it'd be really great to have people that are interested in this project help, because one of the things that we want to do is eliminate the line altogether. And working on that problem set is the next challenge. And what we see right now is, because our phones are able to process the information pretty quickly, we did Central Park. So right now I can go into Central Park and be able to follow that line. But what we'd really like to do is get to the point where you can go through any environment without the line altogether. And some of the challenges that come with that are pretty similar to what we see on autonomous vehicle navigation, but that is a trajectory to allow a person to ultimately, pull that whole Geordie Star Trek thing off, where you're able to essentially get through your environment almost like a sighted person would. This is the first step in that direction, and it's an exciting leap forward.
This is a question that was direct message to me, Thomas. How confident do you feel while running with the device?
I'm a pretty fast runner, and I'm not Usain Bolt, so I'm not that fast. But if you're thinking about the fact that I'm on that video within an inch or two of the line, is what I'm being told, I'm very confident. And if it has object detection and turn detection, so if there is a turn coming up to the left, it will use haptic feedback on my jaw conducting headphones to show me that a left turn's coming. And when I'm listening to that tunnel, I feel as confident as any blind runner could be. It's incredibly reactive. At any point in time, if it loses the frame of the line in its sight, it's going to let me know to stop. Or, for example, if I'm running in Central Park, there was a car parked in the line that was occluding it. As soon as it doesn't see a clear zone of line ahead in the distance, immediately it tells me to stop. So I have a high degree of confidence that it is accurate.
So to Thomas, I'm not sure if someone brought this up. I got disconnected. Have you worked with the people at WhereWorks? We had one of the founders at a previous meetup, and they have a haptic device that they actually use with people with vision impairments. So if you haven't, I think you should definitely get in touch with them.
Well, thank you for the recommendation. I think there's definitely an opportunity to collaborate with other companies like WhereWorks on this, and really the ability to give haptic feedback to people is incredibly useful. That's kind of the next step. So I could see some of these technologies marrying together. I like that comment about the no lines on the road anymore. But thank you for the WhereWorks recommendation. If anybody has a point of contact there, I would love to have it.
Yeah, I'll send to you on LinkedIn, and we'll go from there. Cool. All right, so I think we have a few more questions for you as well. There was a question about skiing. Did Andy ask that one already or not? No?
Yeah, I saw the one about skiing. So that's definitely a sport that we do have blind people participating with the tether right now. And actually, one of the Google creative producers, Ryan Burke, who is really instrumental in the project, is a huge skier. So he and I have been joking back and forth that if we can figure out how to paint on snow, we'll have it. So
stay away from the yellow snow, I guess.
Sorry. Good joke for a guy with a dog. So there we go.
Yes, exactly. Okay. What do you think needs to be done? I apologize if Andy asked this one. What do you think needs to be done in order to make a project guideline available in cities around the world? It's like to commercialize it, ramp it up higher.
Yeah, so we currently have the need to collect more data. So people being able to have different environments, in a different, all the data we can collect is what we need right now. So people, volunteering to work on the project to collect data in different environments is really what we need. And also we need testers, so trusted testers. And then we do need, I run a large charity, and we're kind of investing in this as something to augment the dogs, what they do. So we need smart people to kind of put their minds on the project to really get it there. There was a Paralympian in Japan that used the technology to go with the torch relay in the Paralympics this year. And he did a 10-kilometer run. But it's really just getting people interested in the project and kind of taking it to that next step, which is putting it in more environments. That's really what we need.
Yeah, so I live in White Plains, and you guys have the dogs out there pretty much every season. It's really cool. It's like one of the training places for dogs, right?
Yeah. So that's my organization. Yeah, exactly. So we train in White Plains, New York. We also always welcome volunteers to help with the dogs, as well as with the project itself. We have a park nearby called FDR Park, which is about an hour north of the city. And Bill Ma, who's a co-creator on the project with me, and I are, constantly looking for people to get interested in the project to help us move it forward. It really is a pretty creative space. And, it's as much as you put into it, right? Like any of these projects. But this one really has a direct impact on helping people. Obviously, you see the results of your work. We started at the beginning of the pandemic, and by the end of the pandemic, we had a useful model that was actually deployable. So getting the model into more people's hands, doing some testing, as well as developing, if anybody is into development, really looking at it as a project to be able to to get to that next phase. So it's something that we're not looking for venture capital to do. It's something that we've got the resources to do. We just need to get smart people interested in it.
That's a big alarm. We should be applauding that. That's awesome. Very cool. And I mean, you have testers, I would think. Like if you have people that are training the dogs, could they do dual stuff? I mean, I think of it as like you could have you could maybe use an AR device for the testers to help with the training, but I don't know that much about how the dog training is. I just know it's amazing, and the dogs are pretty, just like really add to everyone's life. Not just for people with low vision, people with epilepsy, people, different sensing and cancer detection dogs. That's a whole other thing that I have a lot of interest in.
That's another meetup. So
yeah, exactly. It's really, really amazing stuff. Cool. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate this, and we'd love to hear more and have you back. And since we know your project will be continuing, because you said you're funded, that's great. So we'll love to hear the updates and let us know if we can help in any way. And I'm sending you one of the founders' info on LinkedIn, and I can provide an introduction. Cool. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Take care.
Thanks, Thomas. Fascinating project. Appreciate you joining. Next up, we have Dr. David Levitt. He's the co-founder and CEO of Pantomime Corporation, creator of the Pantomime platform for interactive virtual reality using any mobile or consumer device, headset optional. Levitt was previously the founder and CEO of Hip Software and Connected Media, Connected Media's Connected TV app, one of the first touch apps designed to tap and stroke with your fingers, turned a Palm PDA into a web-powered personalized TV guide and remote control. Dr. Levitt has been a research scientist and software developer at the MIT Media Lab, Atari, Viacom, Interval Research, and Virtual Reality Inventor, VPL Research. Thank you, David, for joining us.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Boy, some acts to follow here. I thought I was ambitious, but I'm beat. I'll show you, maybe I'll start with a short video and then talk a little bit and then present a longer video. Just a second here. So what I'll say, share screen. So you may have seen this 30-second video.
Reality Faucet on today's iPhone and iPad Pros brings realistic physics to augmented reality and lets you play in it. Roll balls, stack boxes, spray bubbles. Virtual objects disappear behind real ones, cradling every contour and crevice. Build things, knock them down. Friction, collision, lighting, sounds, all stunningly real. Seamless animated magic happening live all around you. And it's just the beginning. Reality Faucet at the App Store.
So there's your first 30 seconds there, and it focuses on, you know, some of the magical side of things. The other video will focus more on where the seams are, if you will, and so this uses LiDAR, light detection and ranging, and meaning it works on the last 2 generations of iPad Pros and iPhone Pros. LiDAR has a range of about 15 feet, but it's cumulative, so that as you move around your space, you get a bigger model of your environment. I come from, as you mentioned, Andy, I come from the VPL research where we invented some of the first headsets. I was a little surprised when I joined the team that I had to put in gravity and bouncing and physics. And in a funny way, that's still true, where, you know, as wonderful as the illusions of augmented reality are, physics is sometimes the last bit to really be realistic. Even in a Pokemon Go type world, you have animated characters with fixed animations rather than Newton's law and collisions and momentum and all of those things. So I've wound up being focused more on those kinds of things. And let me just show you this next video. There. Okay, so this one will be a little slower pace, and hopefully you'll see.
I'm going to take you on an informal tour of Reality Faucet and give you an idea of how the LiDAR captures the shape of your space and what its magical strengths and fascinating limitations are. First off, I'll turn up the audio. First off, it comes up with bubbles as the default. And they wind up giving you a pretty good idea of how the shape of the space gets captured. Rolls over the surfaces. You can fill up a basin. You can hold this down and fill it up like that. You can hear in this case that the objects pop. It's also, we do this by hitting the blue button. But if we hit the purple button, that lets us hold an object. A little bubble, these are varying size bubbles. Here's a bigger bubble. I want to focus on that for a moment because, gosh, look at that. As fast as the eye can see, a good 60 frames per second, it's updating the reflections on that shiny bubble to reflect aspects of this room. And when we move up and down or left and right, it responds immediately. Now, of course, when we first launched the app, it hasn't had a chance to capture the room. So it's doing a great fake when you first start. But over time, it actually picks up the real textures in your space and makes an even more accurate view. So you can hold a bubble by hitting the purple button, and you drop it in place, or any object, by hitting the purple button again, or you launch it with the blue button. So it's a pretty simple interface, and then you can select what kind of an object you're interacting with. They all have, oh, did you see that? I'm going to show you for a second what this transparency thing is about. For a moment, it looks like it may be imperfect, but really it's a reflection of the magic behind the LiDAR. LiDAR, the light-based tracking and detection requires you to look at the thing that you're interacting with. Now, notice there's no transparency problem on that side of the table because I've already looked on that side of the table. Now that I've looked at all sides of the table, things disappear over the edge more realistically. And so anything I haven't seen might just not exist. Let me throw a bigger ball.
And this is unedited video, so this
By the
might
way,
be a little bit of a
look at
slow
the
part.
gorgeous shadow underneath. That's something that the newer iPads and the iPhone 13 Pro allow because they have that extra firepower to do astonishing rendering. Whoops, now things do get a little bit confused, right? There's such a great reflection there that the LiDAR is a little confused about whether that's opaque. But let's throw a ball in here just for laughs.
I'm going to make a technical point in a minute. I was going to do it in that corner, but I'm doing it off to the left, if you can hear me here.
You see how that went transparent for a moment? Better yet, this is basically an improvised demonstration. Okay, so that disappeared behind the radiator. Now, where is it? And the answer is, it's gone. Because I hadn't looked at that part of the floor yet. It doesn't, if you know about the physics of Schrodinger's cat, until you opened the box and looked in it, you don't know whether there's a floor in that part of the room. Now I know. So now when I throw something there, it bounces off of the radiator rather than just disappearing as though there was no floor. And that's in general true of LiDAR, anything that you have looked at. Now keep in mind, I've been throwing things, but using that purple drop button, I can position things quite precisely in the space. Let me position some of these. And by the way, you notice, oh, I should be in focus. Whoops. Just like real dominoes, I can make a line. And oh, by the way, if I want to clean up, I just hit the little trash can and it sucks things up. Make that straighter. Once I've got it straight, by the way, I love the way you can see the domino traveling through the tube. But once I've got the height pretty much right, I can just hit the blue button and do things much faster. I may position these a little too far apart. Let's see, I'll actually hold on to this domino and knock this over. Okay, so this is just a quick glimpse. I may as well continue. Let's see. Here I am positioning some boxes. And unlike a lot of apps that have simplified physics, the actual rocking of a box is completely realistic. Now we have a game which is in development, a bunch of games, and one of them just involves getting a higher score by stacking boxes. Now I've already done pretty well making this stack, and somehow it's almost irresistible to mess with it. So that's what I'll do. And maybe that's enough for this particular presentation.
Okay, did that come through okay?
That was awesome. Thank you, Doctor.
So yes, what an exciting time. I sometimes feel like, well, I have to say, when I showed this to some folks at Augmented World Expo, he said, don't quote me. So, but he said it's 2 years ahead of anything else out there. So I'm actually a little disoriented as to where this fits in the state of the art. Except that it seems to be some of the more realistic physics out there. And I did exploit some undocumented or poorly documented Apple stuff and get deep down there. And but I'm actually eager to meet with peers on the physics side and the LiDAR side, because it's just such an exciting area. And I'm eager to meet my peers here in the physics department, if you will. But I know we're almost out of time, and maybe there's time for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Levitt. Yeah, we have a few questions. The first one from Eric. He wants to know where you could download the app, and is it available on Android? Does it work with phones without the LiDAR sensor, or is it only iOS on the latest iPhones?
It's iOS only. In fact, it's iPad Pro and iPhone Pro models from 2020 and 2021. So these days it's going back, more than 2 years. And I suspect that all iPhone and iPad Pro devices going forward will support LiDAR and that kind of physics. In a way, I would say, this is not, I've been doing this since before ARKit existed. And this is the LiDAR side of things, the pre-LiDAR side of things, where you're looking for a flat surface and you're faked out if there's a white wall. The earliest versions of reality, first off, it's called Reality Faucet. It's available in the App Store right now. Any iPhone that has LiDAR or can run it, or any iPad. But the previous generation, where you're doing it optically rather than with LiDAR and looking for a flat surface, and it would fail in a lot of ways because of that. We're not addressing that. That's, we're about seamless magic. And so I guess that's the short answer. We tried to make a mixed one that worked okay on some devices without LiDAR, and it just wound up spoiling the experience for everyone. So we're living in the future now.
Thank you. So here's an interesting question I got. So in the example with the boxes and the digital football,
yeah.
In the future, would it be possible to throw like a real physical football and have it interact with the digital boxes?
So LiDAR responds very quickly compared to the previous optical tracking, but it's not fast enough to really track moving objects. As you may have noticed, we have a very sleepy dog that makes these demos work much better. But actual people motion or object motion is hard to track in real time. So that's not a part. I mean, eventually, of course, but not in the near term.
Is that a hardware limitation? Is that a limitation from the LiDAR itself, or is like the iPhone's LiDAR behind what's possible in LiDAR as a technology, or is the technology itself slow?
Well, it's not that slow. Within a second or two, one of the beautiful things is it's a cumulative model. So once you've walked into the room and looked around even briefly, it's got almost everything it needs to make a nearly seamless experience. One of the cool things that you can do is go from room to room, and it's because it's basically accumulating all of the physical objects within a 15-foot sphere. As you walk from room to room, your play area gets bigger and bigger. You sort of got a glimpse of that when I went behind the radiator there. So when I go outside, I can run down the hill, and as long as I've run down that hill a minute earlier, I get a very detailed model that I'm playing in. But it's not 30 models per second, so it's not close to someone throwing a football.
Sure. Thanks, Doctor. It looks like we have Luke is still on, so I'll open it up for if you have any questions for Luke. If not, we'll hang out with Dr. David Levitt for a bit longer. So let's see. I think
I'm happy to comment a little bit more, because one of the things that makes this unusual is something we've been calling device presence. If you do an ARKit demo and you want your device to collide with something, it invariably passes right through it, right? There's no physicalization. And we actually have a patent in this thing where you can get extra information by knowing the shape of the device that you're holding. And most importantly, it lets you carry and attach tools. Right now, a faucet is a pretty simple, almost trivial one, but being able to catch tools and scoop things up, you'll see that in some of our apps, or empty out a container. Those are the kinds of things that aren't commonly a part of AR experiences yet, but have been sort of the bread and butter of what we've been doing.
Awesome. So there's another question that I received is how big can the model that you're tracking be? Like how much data can be held in a local session for the LiDAR?
It's not an explicit limit, and as I was mentioning, sometimes just going around in 15-foot radius chunks gives you a rather complete experience. But I'm a little less clear on the undocumented way that it can fail. Meaning, if you're 45 feet away, it seems like your resolution goes down, and I guess that's part of the compromise between the very accurate tracking and the very large area that you're starting to demand.
Could you save a session and put back the objects in the future, and what would that require?
So yeah, I think that's a logical direction. Or you're putting out you put out an object into the world and you might undo.
Sure.
Or just come back to the same location, assuming that not many objects have changed their location. I think those are really promising areas for the future of this, and there's no reason why we can't start doing it in 2022.
Awesome. And just one more question to close. Where do you find the app? How much does it cost? Are there additional purchases and in-app purchases and whatnot?
Yes. So it's in the App Store. It's Reality Faucet. You can it's free with the in-app purchases. At this moment, the in-app purchases are all free. Most of them will be 99 cents or free, and they're and several of them come with the app, including the soccer balls of a couple of sizes, boxes of a couple of sizes, and bubbles. And we have some really exciting ones down the pike. So start with a free app and get all the in-app purchases you can now while you can.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. David Levitt. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining New York Augmented Reality. You have the ability to unmute yourself if you want to come in and say hi or share anything you're working on. We'll keep the room open for just a few more minutes, and then we'll close out, and wishing you all a great night. Thanks for joining.
Great session.
Thank you. Great to have you here. Thank you, Luke. Great having you.
Thank
you.
you.
So much for joining. Real pleasure.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Yep. All right. I think we're going to sign off now, but thanks for joining New York Augmented Reality. See you next time.